am so glad that you are here. We are so excited for our show tonight. We have Roy Holdren, music, and Donna Mathiowetz, and we have an amazing show that is going to help you have hope. The Song of Hope is unbelievable. I am so excited to share that with you. And Donna's message is also one that needs to be screamed from the rooftops because every single person needs to hear this. For those of you who don't know me, hello, my name is Miki Speer. I am a musician, author of My Heart Still Remembers, which you can get for free if you want to click on my website. It's a grief exercise. But I'm also the host of tonight's show, The Healing Half, where we spend half an hour learning about ways to address our own wounds, get a little inspiration, and as well learn how to serve other people in ways that are actually impactful. We are so excited that you are here. We've got an amazing show for you tonight. So if you haven't yet, be sure to like the page wherever that is for you and follow my two guests along on their social medias because, again, the content that they are providing today, you guys, is going to be so good. So every single show, I just want to kind of lay out why did we start the show? Why am I here? Well, when I was 13, my mom died from cancer. And I spent the better part of a decade just pretending and saying the words that I'm sure a lot of you have said before, which is, this isn't a big deal. I'm fine. And I tried to convince myself that I truly was fine until eventually, of course, as you know, you can't run from your grief for forever. So it took me a long time to learn how to address my grief and work through it, which is why I'm so passionate about that. And that's why I wanted to start a show so that we could all learn together how to address our multitude of emotions, not just grief, as well as infuse my other passions, which are music and hope, and give you guys a little bit of a bump because I think 2020, Lord knows, we need it. So we're going to kick off today with one of my favorite local Minneapolis musicians. Roy is the co-leader of my favorite group called NSAI. So we are co-leaders together. He is a mentor of mine and just an absolute gem and talent of a human being. So Roy, thank you so much for being on the show. I'll let you introduce yourself and introduce your song and then play your heart out.
All right. Thank you, Miki. My name is Roy Holdren. I'm a singer-songwriter from Bloomington. I've been a musician all my life, and I've been pursuing songwriting very passionately since, the last century, and been making regular trips down to Nashville and writing with writers down there and pitching my songs to artists. And this is a song that was written hopefully to pitch to Reba McEntire, but it didn't make the cut for that. But it's still got a good message, and I hope you enjoy it. Whoa, 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 whoa. It's hard to dream a future when we're fighting through today, and it feels as though no one is on our side. We can't see the rainbow when we're standing in the rain, soaked to the skin and searching for some sign. I can't say how it will happen, I can't say just when, but I know I will see your smile again when this is over, when it's behind us, when we get to where the sunshine finally finds us. Hold on till then, don't break, just bend. Let's keep doing what we need to up until that moment when I can see you smile again. Whoa, 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 whoa. We used to pull together, now it seems we've pulled apart. Won't work if we're just in it for ourselves. We will make it better the moment that we start to open up our fists and reach to help. The distances and differences will seem so small, and then We will find our smile again when this is over, when it's behind us, when we get to where the sunshine finally finds us. Hold on till then, don't break, just bend. Let's keep doing what we need to up until that moment when I can see your smile. I can see your smile again. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Oh my goodness, Roy! Oh, I am just in awe. I know I've heard the song before. I was one of the lucky few who got a little sneak peek of it. And the second I heard it, I knew you had to be on the show because that embodies everything I think all of us need to hear in 2020. So if Reba doesn't pick it up, I know somebody else will. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thanks for having me on, Mickey. It was a pleasure.
Oh, absolutely, Roy. You're welcome back anytime. Thank you for sharing your gift with us today.
Thank you.
You guys, if you have not yet, be sure you follow Roy on his Facebook page as well as on his website. You're going to want to absolutely stay in touch with all the great music that he is putting out. I am so grateful for every single one of my guests that come on the show. So if we could show them a little bit of love and follow them on social media, that would just be so awesome. So Roy, thank you again. And what I love about that song, as you guys know, I love music. If you like music, make sure you add it in the comments and give me an amen. Music heals, and there is something that music can do that nothing else can. And sometimes we need a song of hope to kind of bring us out. And to just really let that message of hope sink in. So, Roy, thank you again. I can't wait to see where Smile Again lands. I know it's going to be big one day. So, in addition to music, I love to bring other people onto the show to talk about some real stories with real advice and real tangible takeaways. So, without further ado, I am so excited to introduce you to the author of What Have You Done Since I Left, which is an amazing book you all should absolutely read. Without further ado, please welcome Donna onto the show. And if you know Donna, give her a big hello in the comments. Hi, Donna.
Hello, Mickey. Hello, Mickey. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Oh, it is absolutely an honor to have you on my show. So thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome.
Now, I know at least part of your story because I've read most of this book so far, but some people who haven't read the book yet probably don't. Do you mind just giving us kind of a 30,000-foot view of what got you into the grief speaking business?
Certainly. Well, it was nothing that I ever aspired to as a young woman, that's for sure. And I'm grateful for those who do it, even without the reason I have for doing it. But it began our own grief journey began over 28 years ago. It was March of 1992. At that point, my husband and I, and we had two children. Jill was 18. She had graduated from high school, was living with a roommate in town and going to school and all the things that kids do. And our son Tim was 16 and a sophomore here at the Hastings High School. And it was this particular Friday night. I saw Tim off to school that morning. After school, he went with some friends and ended up at a gathering of teens, a party out 5 miles west of town. And at the party was what I describe as a really bad combination of things was going on. There was about a dozen teenagers with, as I always say, they're yet to be developed brains, because it's a fact that the brains aren't done growing, especially in a 16-year-old kid who, nothing bad's going to happen, right? They're immortal and they've got it all under control. There was some beer being consumed, and there was a 19-year-old acquaintance no one I'd ever even heard of before that night, who he for some reason brandished a 44 caliber Magnum handgun. And I had talked to Tim about 8 o'clock that night. And an hour later, he was shot and killed instantly with that gun. So that began our, beyond painful, difficult. I always tell people there's anyone who's gone through traumatic grief, there's really no sufficient words to describe what you go through when you lose someone, that you love and expected to have them far outlive you. We're just not supposed to bury our kids, are we? But many of us have had the experience. And so that started everything for us. We joined Compassionate Friends, which is a international group just designed for parents who've lost children. And we were a member there for about a year or so. And about a year and a half after Tim died, and I do say I know I was still in somewhat of a grief fog. But when we were asked about whether we would consider doing this, we said yes. And so we said yes to becoming a family to a 15-year-old boy who was found in a Ukrainian orphanage. Oleg had cancer. And the woman who found him in that orphanage, she was bound and determined to get him back to the States where he could hopefully be cured of his disease. But of course she needed, along with doctors and everyone else on the team, she needed a family for him. And so that's a whole nother miracle story of God's intervening in our lives. And we just said yes. We kind of thought about it, talked about it, and thought, well, this isn't at all what we had in mind. And should we be doing this knowing that he has cancer and that he could die? And we were still reeling from Tim's death. But we said yes. And he became my focal point for 6.5 months. And then he died of his cancer. So, and that was also in March of 94. So the boys died 2 years apart, both in March. So from there, I just began, it took me a few years before I was able to be an effective speaker, that I had the composure I needed to really get my message across. So my heart was still too tender for a time, but as I could, I began sharing our story, mostly even just at our local grief group that we helped form. About 5 years after Tim died, my husband and I were part of developing a grief group right here in Hastings. And we're very, very involved with speaking and facilitating and all the things that it takes to make one of those groups be effective and meaningful for people. And beyond that, I just started then speaking to other groups, and it just has continued. And now that's been, I've been doing it really very actively for about 20 years.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. How do you even say? I am so sorry for your losses.
Thank you. I know you are.
Again, just the fact that you're here and you're sharing it, that's so powerful and such strength. No one should have to bury a child ever under any circumstances. So
No.
I know we're going to have you back on the show to kick off the new year to talk about forgiveness, because I know there's a lot of that to unpack with
Yes.
Tim's death, of course. But today I would kind of like to focus a little bit more on in those moments, right after you lost and your beautiful sons, what helped, what didn't help. And I know you also kind of talk about it in your book.
Yes.
So feel free to
Yeah.
kind of direct it however you'd like.
Well, yes, as Miki mentioned, my new book, What Have You Done Since I Left? And I want to tell you how I came up with the name for that, the title for that book. It's a really great story. The one thing is, our over the umbrella over our whole life is the death of these boys, but the stories that have come from that, I don't know why God allowed me to be the one to, bury two children. One in the way that Tim died, as I said, I saw Tim off to school that Friday morning. The next time I saw my son, he was laying in his casket on Monday at the funeral home. Now with Oleg, I literally loved him to death. That's what I can say about Oleg, because I was with him all the time, 24/7. We were together. And he did inpatient chemo. So once a month he'd be admitted to Children's in St. Paul and have his chemo, and then he would get discharged, and he would speak of none of it. He wanted to get back to life and living. Oleg, I think he believed that coming to Hastings, as we described heaven to him later on in his life, as his life was coming to a close, he really believed he'd landed in heaven when he got to Hastings. So
Oh,
we had to
I
kind
like
of
Hastings too, but wow.
but I guess if you compare it to the life in an orphanage, laying in a back room where they weren't feeding him much anymore because he was pretty sick and they didn't think he was going to make it. You come to Hastings and get, all our attention and the support of community and our church and the schools. He made an impact in his short 6.5 months here. He left a real mark on our lives. And so I guess I consider that, I believe God knows what we're going to do with all of this. And just like what you're doing, Miki, and, what your mother-in-law Tammy is doing, I guess I got the privilege then to understand grief coming from a place of sudden tragic death, and grief coming from a place of terminal illness and caregiving and all that entails. And so I guess I am now more well-rounded as I help other people, because I can talk to a caregiver and say, you need to take care of yourself too. All the things that we are concerned with people who are caring for people that are, living out their last years or months or days or whatever it might be. But it's just been quite a journey. So along with my passion to help people in their grief is my passion to help people know how to help. I want to grow helpers out there who will be better versed in what to say, what not to say, because I think it's a real fear. I could ask anyone, are you totally comfortable with, what to say to your neighbor when you find out that her husband died, or whatever it might be? Almost everyone says, no, not really. No, tell me. And that's why when I do some of my speaking, I speak to groups, not just grief groups, but sometimes to places like Keller Williams or Securian Financial. And so part of my time with a group like that is talking about, would you like to be more comfortable at what to say? And so what I did in writing the section in my book that's called Come Alongside, I asked questions of, I think, 8 people, all that I had met. I knew them personally. I'd met them through grief groups and places. And I asked them to think about their experience of their loss with 3 things in mind: what was helpful, what wasn't helpful, and have you found any meaning, purpose, or hope in your life since they died? And the answer, I just let people write as much or as little as they wanted. They sent them back to me, and I didn't edit. Because I thought, what, if someone reading this sees 2 or 3 comments in the section of what helped and what didn't help, all the same from these people, it might be like, that must be really true, because I'm hearing it now 8 times. I didn't try to make them all sound different, because I think that's powerful to hear some of the same things from 8 different people who've experienced loss. And we kind of chuckle sometimes at our grief group about how we could probably compose and author a big book on what not to say to someone who's grieving, right? But our culture, we're just not very good at it. We'd like to avoid talking about altogether. We'd like our friends who have lost a loved one to just get back to normal faster than we can. It's just the way we are. But I don't think we can stop trying to make it better, because that's what the grieving community needs, is more people who will understand, more people who won't be totally put out by us needing to talk about our loved one or just the sound of their name, but instead to encourage, let's say, let's realize there's the elephant in the room, and maybe we should just talk about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for kind of explaining that. I love those three questions. I think that's, we should
Yeah,
all be, anyone who's lost anyone should ask yourself those three
yeah,
questions. I think that's amazing.
yeah.
And I know that was my favorite part of the book. So
Mhm.
for those of you listening, you've got to get this book. The
Yeah.
link is in the comment section. So make sure you get it. But Donna, kind of going back to your situation, plus these 8 that you interviewed, can you give us a little behind the scenes on those common themes that you're talking about?
Mhm. The one thing that I know is true is there's some words you should take out of your vocabulary when speaking to someone who's battling, their grief. Um, and one of those is at least. We tend to want to minimize,
Mm,
like for example, someone who has lost a child, to say, well, at least you still have your other children, or someone who's suffered a miscarriage or a stillbirth. Well, at least you can have children, you can have more. That is of no help at all. It really isn't. And it does, beyond not helping, it's hurtful, because what it does is it doesn't validate the pain they're in.
right.
And when you're in the throes of grief, you are so fragile anyway. Someone described it as walking around without skin, because everything is raw. And I
Mm,
think you and anyone else who's been there, we're very sensitive, and so everything is prickly to us, and so we are. I do kind of tongue in cheek with my grief groups, and I'll say, we're kind of a tough crowd. We really are, because we don't even know from day to day what it is we need, right?
yes,
What we
right.
need is for our loved one to come back through the door. And absolutely, part of us knows that can't happen, but that is really all we need to make us better again. So in the meantime, everything else we can be easily offended, and it's not because we're trying to be. We're kind of helpless for a time. But there's work that we have to do. People say, well, time heals all wounds. I disagree with that it isn't time by itself. It's how are we going to spend the time? How
Mm,
are we going to educate ourselves as grieving people to know more about what this is? I had never experienced grief before Tim died. I
really?
lost a grandpa, who was elderly and was hoping he could die because he'd laid in a nursing home for years, unable to speak or feed himself. He was miserable, and that's a different kind of grief. There's
Yes.
there's relief with a loss like that. Like, thank goodness grandpa's out of his misery, but you can't say that when you have a healthy 16-year-old boy that
Oh,
goes off to school and never comes home again. So um, yeah, so not minimizing also that there's the grief isn't a competition. And sometimes it's just personalities that always want to have the better story, no matter what you're talking about. And probably all of you could say, oh yeah, I know one or two of those, right? Well, it's in grief, we recognize that that's, again, not helpful, because for you to say, well, wait till you hear what happened to me. There again, we're saying you can just pack your little story up in a box, because it's not as big a deal as mine was.
right.
So those are some things that are not helpful, and there's many of them, and I was able to put a lot of those in my book. What is helpful is saying their name. We say that all the time, and that's why in my grief groups I ask people, as we do the introductions and even as we're doing discussion, don't just say he. I want you to use their name, because there are places where it should be perfectly safe and acceptable to say their names, and a grief group is one of them. Sometimes out in the world, we don't always feel we can do that in certain company, and that is hurtful to us, to not be able to say their name.
Right.
So and we can, those who want to help us can say their name by, maybe it's in a card where you
Mm,
write a story. Maybe you have a favorite memory of this person who has passed away, and you share it in writing it out. Even if you've told them verbally the story, I can tell you that will become a treasure to them, and they will
mm,
open that card and read it again and again and again. And I have people, even 28 years later, a couple people that I have in mind, that they've told me the same story about Tim about 3 or 4 times over the years. And then when they, like the last time she was going to tell me, and she said, "Did I tell you this?" I said, "No, I don't think so, because I want to hear it again." So I just pretend I didn't hear it yet.
Oh, that's so sweet.
But that's how much it means to us, to hear someone, because especially in child loss, one of the biggest fears we have is that people will forget that they ever lived.
Mm,
Depending on their age when they died, in a lot of cases, they didn't have a lot of years to make a big impression in this world. And so it can be that people will just forget, especially think about when people lose, miscarriage, or stillbirths, or tiny children, that some people never even met. So those are extremely painful situations. But to say their name, to share a story, to say, "I miss her too. Can I tell you a story?"
mm.
And then I think that one of the fears people have is like, "Well, I said something and she started to cry." It's like, that's okay. I really believe that if someone can cry, maybe that easily, it's because the tears are already right at the surface. They're always just right there, and one word can open the dam. And it's like,
Mm.
instead of thinking you did something wrong, think that you did something right by giving her permission to release her pain at that point.
Giving them a safe space to
Giving him
cry.
a safe
Oh my
space.
gosh.
Yeah, it might be in the meat department at the grocery store. Is that a little uncomfortable? Would we prefer not to do it there? Yes, but it happens, and it's okay.
Mm.
It's okay.
Oh,
And
yeah.
when the others can become comfortable with our pain, we now feel like we're not so alone, because a grieving person can feel very isolated.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it seems like in a day's time, everyone's gone back to their normal life. We watch everyone just go back to work and go back to getting together with friends, and we just feel very stuck, and very, first of all, we don't feel like doing some of those things. And secondly, we wonder if we'll ever enjoy life again. And so
Mm.
it's a time of isolation. And again, what's our part as the grieving person is not to allow ourselves to isolate, that we need to
Right.
push ourselves. And even if that means getting up and going for a walk, at least we're out the door and getting some fresh air and doing something good for our bodies and our minds. So, but there's all kinds of what,
Yeah.
there's a list for sure of what can
Yes.
help. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And I know we've got about 5 minutes left to
Okay.
wrap up our time together. So thank you for all the stuff that you shared. I know I've got a list. So, everybody watching, whether you're watching live or as a replay, in the comment section, what of those things that she listed jumped out at you for things that you can do to help? I'm so curious at what resonated with you, because I'm kind of, like Donna said, when you're on the other side of it, when my mom died, it's like I saw things through a certain lens. So I'm kind of wondering, from the other side of the coin, what were you like, oh, I didn't know that that would help? Because everything you said, Donna, was so awesome. So thank you
Mhm.
so much for sharing all of that. And I know if you guys are curious more about that list that she's talking about, it's in here. You just got to get your own copy. So make sure you do. Donna, the last 5 minutes are yours. What would you like to share with the world?
Well, I'm going to close. I think I started to say this, and then I got off on a rabbit trail, because I do that a lot, because I have so many things in my head. But I'm going to tell you about the title of the book, What Have You Done Since I Left? So often in our grief groups, someone new to this whole phenomenon that they're going through comes into a group, and they're maybe even bordering on just not caring about life anymore, rather despondent, and like suggestions like, well, maybe you could volunteer, maybe you could go back to helping at the school, or and I don't want to, I barely can get out of bed, I really don't care anymore. And I don't usually have to pose the question, but usually someone who's further along on their journey will say, but what would they want you to do, the loved one who's gone? And my husband, who was many times at these meetings with me, he said it was during one of those times when he just kind of left our conversation, and he got this little, a vision, a dream, a little video going through his head. And what it was he saw himself, he had died, he'd gone to heaven, he met Tim there, and there was this, of course, wonderful reunion of father and son. And then they sat down at a table, and on opposite sides of a table, and Tim reached across and grasped both of Dick's hands and said, he was like excited. His eyes were big. And he said, Dad, tell me everything you've done since I left. So that's where the title of the book came from. What have you done since I left? And I often close when I speak with the groups, I often close with that. And I look at the faces of people and they're like, oh my, how, I have no way of telling you for sure that's going to happen, that
Right.
someone's going to ask you that. I don't know. But what if it does? How do we all want to answer that question? And if the tables were turned, how would we want to have them, answer the question for us?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Donna. That is an
You're
amazing
welcome.
question for all of us to be asking. I am so grateful for you, for your heart, for your message. I wish I could go back to 1990 and just rewrite. And I know that's not the exact year. I wish none of that happened to you. So I'm so sorry that that is your story. But Tim and Oleg live on through you, and we are so grateful to get to know a piece of them
Yes.
because we got to meet you tonight. So thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for being
Thank
here.
you.
I so appreciate it.
Thank you, Miki. You're doing great work. Thank you.
Oh, you're an angel. Thank you so much. You guys, Donna is such a joy and such a blast. And actually, this is one of her quotes that I wanted to make sure we shared as we kind of wrap it up for tonight. Work through your grief, give yourself grace, and be open to growth. I think that last part is one that I know I was stuck on for so long, where it's like I just wanted to live in complete denial. I thought I was totally fine and that I could go back to the way I was before my mom died. I thought it was just a bad weekend, go on south, and I'm just going to snap right back to where I was, have the same friends, have the same life. And I tried so hard to do that. So I love how Donna just says her message in such a nice, compact way where it's like, we are not the same person we were before the loss, but we can't stay in that grief forever. What are we going to do to carry out the legacy of our loved one is an amazing question we should all be asking ourselves every day. So please get your own copy of Donna's book. Link is in the comments section, as well as if you have not signed up for my email list, make sure you head to MikiSpeer.com. I'll make sure I put that link in the comments one more time because I'm going to send you the notes from tonight's show, the links to get in touch with both Donna and the amazing Roy Holdren, whose song is still stuck in my head. Whoa, whoa, oh, so good. And you're going to want to absolutely make sure you're on that list because we're going to send a lot of great resources your way. So if you haven't yet, head there and join the list, and I'll make sure you get the replay of the link as well. Next week's episode, you guys, we are talking about pet loss. Who knew, right? We talk about humans so much, and that is so important. But I hear oftentimes, people who lose pets and they don't know what to do because it's awkward, right? People don't know how to react. People don't really know what to say. And so we're going to talk next week about that. So if you are on my email list, I have a big ask from you, and I'll make sure I post about it a lot too. But I would love, 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 love for you to send me a photo. All you have to do is respond to the email that I send with a pet that you at any point in your life loved who is no longer with us, because I want to come up with a nice collage of all the pets that touched us and kind of give honor to that as we talk about ways to cope and heal next week with that. So Donna, Roy, thank you both so much again for being here. You are lights in the world, and I am so honored to be part of your journey. For those of you watching, whether it's live or as a replay, thank you so much for being here. I am so grateful. Make sure you stay in touch because I want to hear your story one day. Thank you guys so much. Bye.